We are a spiritual community, philosophically based on existentialist and feminist principles, and dedicated to human liberation. We make our spiritual home in the old stone church, which was hand-built by African-American Antioch East Baptist Church. We acknowledge that racial hostility drove those African-Americans from the area, and we honor them and the powerful history of this place. We also acknowledge that in the 1800s, the Muskogee Creek people were driven from this land, and we support justice for all indigenous people. Our opening song is going to be Bread and Roses, page 9. Thank you, Kathy. Our musician today is Kathy McGuire. Let's give her a hand. Okay, is there anyone here who's here for the first time or hasn't been back in a while? You'd like to stand up and introduce yourselves? Yes.
My name is Raymond. Yes, for obvious reasons, I haven't been here a long time.
Welcome back.
And I'm so glad you opened up today. Thank you.
Yes. Let's thank the people in the neighborhood. I know Lorraine and Edith, who's not in the neighborhood, and Robert, and I don't know who else was involved in getting us open and turning up the heat early so it'd be warm when we all got here. So thanks for those. All right, does anyone have a birthday or an anniversary that they want to celebrate? Catrice. Birthday? On the 11th? Okay. To Catrice, happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Catrice. Happy birthday to you.
Robert.
C'est moi. I'm forced to admit I'm far too noble to lie. That man whose birthday came this week, c'est moi.
Of course they key. Okay, Robert, happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Robert. Happy birthday to you.
All right, how about another song? That one on the run. Okay, this one is The Poet's Eye on page 10. We are having a bookish celebration today. So I've got a couple quotes that go along with Charlene's talk. Books make great gifts because they have whole worlds inside of them. And it's much cheaper to buy somebody a book than it is to buy them the whole world. Books are good company in sad times and happy times. For books are people. People who have managed to stay alive by hiding between the covers of a book. E.B. White. I don't see any young people to go downstairs for the youth program, but if anyone does have children they'd like to bring, if you could let us know no later than the Monday preceding so we can have childcare. See, I don't see Marcia. Is Marcia here? Oh, it's that person with the short hair. Sorry. So we have a moment to have a minister's moment to be come forward. You don't have anything?
I'm just very excited that we're still here. I got messages last night that the power was off. And we'll be back on until 3 o'clock this afternoon and thought that we weren't going to get to meet. So, hey, we're divine providence.
Yes.
And Georgia Power.
Yeah.
Say the same.
Okay, we're going to take about 5 minutes for silent meditation where you can sit quietly and meditate, pray, agitate, and I will let you know when the time is up. She is a longtime member of First D. She has taught English and women's studies, and she now is a writer and a bookseller. Her first book that was published is Dark Lady, a novel of Amelia Bassano Lanier, and she co-authored Murder at the Estate Sale with her wife Libby, writing under Lily Charles, and the forthcoming Murder at the Book Fair. So let's give a hand for Charlene Ball.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. I'm doing as Marty did last time and taking my mask off in hopes that the microbes aren't running around in the air on me. And Libby and I really did not plan this. I just grabbed up my hat and put it on because it has a book theme. So I keep the book theme going. So the title is From Shakespeare to Beauvoir, A Feminist Life in Books. Well, it could just as easily have been From Louisa May Alcott to Isabel Wilkerson, or Beatrix Potter to Betty Friedan, or From Pooh to Heather Cox Richardson, or any one of those, because I've been reading for so long. Books have always been at the center of my life, reading them, writing, selling, collecting them. In 4th grade, I was reading silently at the end of the day, a quiet time before the bell rang. My teacher stopped beside my desk and placed a book in front of me. The title read, Little Women. She whispered, "This is for winning the contest." I was so absorbed in what I was already reading that I couldn't remember, that I thought I heard her say, "This is for the women contest," because of the word women on the cover. And I thought, oh dear, do I have to enter a contest of some sort? And tell what I know about women, or what? But I started reading the book, and I read till the bell rang, and then I took it home and sat in my favorite blue chair and read until Mama called me to come help her fix supper. And I read that book, I suppose, about 16 times all told in the years between the time I got it in 4th grade and when I graduated from high school, and then even afterwards. I'd memorize passages, I could quote me passages from it. I learned about not only the 4 Marx sisters, but about Roman authors, because there were quotes in it, and Shakespeare quotes. And I learned that families were different from my own. My parents were teachers, but they, for some reason, did not always encourage me to read. My daddy said he wouldn't give me books for Christmas or my birthday because I read too much anyway. It didn't hurt my eyes. And Mother once bought me on impulse a book of fairy tales from the dime store, and I read that and read it. Later, when she was already sick with the cancer that would take her life when I was about 14, she gave me a copy of Dickens' A Christmas Carol. Marley was dead to begin with. When I was in high school, after Mama died, Daddy said I could only read my textbooks and the newspaper and the Reader's Digest. But he said the right way to read the Reader's Digest was to read only 1 article per day, because it had exactly the number of articles that there were in a month. He had all kinds of odd reviews. And the school didn't have many books anyway. We didn't have a library. We had a room with some books in it. No Dewey Decimal System or anything. And so I read most of those. But the newspaper was great. I read all the editorials. James Reston and Ralph McGill and Dorothy Thompson. I was so excited that there was a woman columnist. And I agreed totally with Reston and Ralph McGill about how the civil rights activists were being treated. I argued with my daddy about it because they believed that segregation should end, and he wasn't sure. And so we argued and argued, but in a friendly way. He never told me I couldn't have my own opinion. Maybe he did have second thoughts about my reading the newspaper somewhere. In high school, I discovered Shakespeare. I read Macbeth and fell in love with the whole package. Odd, beautiful language, the open-air theater where fascinating stories about murder and intrigue and romance were told, people talking to themselves in poetry about how they felt before and after murdering someone. The raven himself is hoarse, that croaks the entrance of Duncan under my battlements. Fill me from head to toe with direst cruelty. But then, out, damn spot, out, I say. And tomorrow, creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time. And all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, out, brief candle. Strong stuff. I read other plays on my own then and later. Hamlet, more murder, more talking to themselves, more poetry. Romeo and Juliet, teenagers in love. Street fights, more talking and poetry to oneself. In college, I majored in English, of course, so I could read as much as I could. I mostly read books, poetry, and plays written by men. More Shakespeare, Marlowe. Is this the face that launched 1,000 ships and burnt the topless towers of Ilium? Books by Dickens. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. Some women. George Eliot, Jane Austen. It is a truth universally accepted that a man in possession of fortune should be in want of a wife. Jane Austen, one professor said, was a joke. I didn't. On my own, I read science fiction, Thomas Mann, Kafka, J.R.R. Tolkien. In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. I was resigned that most of the books I read and loved were by men, and many of those men made disparaging or hostile comments about women, about their bad nature and lack of achievement. That was just the way the world was, I thought. But I did ask questions about the New Testament. Women were to keep silent in church, not teach men, not ask questions in public, but ask their husbands at home. What? Most of the men I knew didn't know any more than the women did. Women worked, ran businesses, taught school, worked on farms all around me. Most teachers in my small rural area were women. I discovered Simone de Beauvoir's The Second Sex in my 20s. I was amazed and overwhelmed. This was a woman and a philosopher, incredibly well-read and brilliant, actually talking about things that bothered me. Why were men in charge of everything? Why did they look down on women and girls so much? Why were most of the books I read by men? Why were most of the books by women not as important? Beauvoir took seriously questions I had only heard talked about with laughs and condescension, even anger. My daddy chuckled at the first woman newscasters on TV. The arguments against women reading the news were, their voices were too high. They just didn't sound serious enough. They weren't being discriminated against, they were just not suited to the job. Beauvoir pulled it all together and made sense of it. It was part of a pattern. Women were the second sex. Men were the first, and women were secondary. To the side. Beauvoir quoted words from ancient Christian fathers that shocked me in their ferocity. And I won't quote any of them, they're just too awful. Then came the women's movement of the 1970s, the so-called second wave. About this time, I also came out, which intensified my pro-woman stance a lot. Books like not only Beauvoir's, but Betty Friedan, Kate Millett, Germaine Greer, Audre Lorde. She was a black lesbian poet and activist who said, I am a black lesbian mother, poet, activist doing my work. Are you doing yours? Books titled Sappho was a right-on woman, and journals called Sinister Wisdom, Common Lives, Lesbian Lives, Feminary, Chrysalis. My first published short story was in Sinister Wisdom. But how did feminism and lesbian feminism go with Shakespeare? He wrote The Taming of the Shrew, a play about how a strong-willed woman learns to submit to her husband after some witty repartee and some knockdown, drag-out fights. Shakespeare gives her lines to say about how women should be submissive to their husbands because their husbands went out to work or sailed the seas while they stayed safe at home. He wrote wonderfully real, sympathetic women characters and some mean ones too. Rosalind, who dresses as a boy and sasses everyone. Viola, who dresses as a boy and has a woman fall in love with her. Portia, who as a lawyer argues and wins a case in court. Ophelia, who falls in love and goes crazy. Lady Macbeth, who helps her husband commit murder and goes crazy. So in graduate school, I went to a lecture by a small, dapper British historian named A.L. Rouse, who declared that he had discovered Shakespeare's Dark Lady of the Sonnets, and that she was Emilia Bassano Lanier, or Lanier. And she was a poet and a feminist. I was galvanized. I couldn't wait to find out more about this woman. I'd read everything I could find about her, mostly by Rouse. True, he had a low opinion of her character and said disparaging things about her, though he did allow she was a good poet. Then feminist scholars discovered her. They didn't like Rouse or his Dark Lady theory, mainly because of his misogyny. They saw her as a poet and a pioneer woman writer who got published. And I had already begun to write a novel about her. I might not have finished it if I had not met the woman who ended up becoming my wife. Libby joined my writers group in 1997. She encouraged my writing and I encouraged hers. We wrote our first novels and got them published. And when the unlooked-for possibility of same-sex marriage came about in 2016, we got married. My historical novel is called Dark Lady, a novel of Emilia Bassano Lanier, published in 2017. And it's not up here, but I have bags of it in the car. I'm going to get some after the service and put them out. This book brings together my separate strands of Shakespeare and feminism. Because Emilia was a feminist. She wrote a poem that argued for women's equality and published it in 1611. Same year as the King James Bible, by the way. She used biblical arguments to defend Eve, saying that she had only wanted to share knowledge with her dear, and that Adam, being stronger and supposedly wiser, could have said no. Furthermore, men's crime of crucifying Jesus was far worse than anything Eve had done. Therefore, she wrote, "Let us have our liberty again. You came not into the world without our pain. Make that a bar against your cruelty. Your fault being greater, why should you disdain our being your equals, free from tyranny?" Yeah, well, that's strong stuff too. I imagine how a woman might live as a nascent feminist in a world that was changing, like mine was, in which women were still the second sex and would remain so for a long time to come, yet some of them had the chance to write and publish, to read exciting literature, to expand their minds. I wrote about how this woman might have been treated as second class by the greatest English writer, her boyfriend Shakespeare, but who wrote her own book anyway and published it. A woman who was helped and encouraged by other women, as I have been. A woman who believed in her own words, believed in herself. So here are some of the books right here.
Thank you. This is Shakespeare right here, complete works. This is Little Women. You can see how bad it is. This is A Christmas Carol. This is a feminist book that was written about Amelia Lanier. This is Simone de Beauvoir, the latest translation, which is much better than the first one that I read. And this is my novel, Dark Lady. So thank you all.
our process or anything like that? Okay, if not, thank you all.
I have a question about your process
Oh, okay.
when you work together during the.
Can you hear me or do I need to go back up there?
Okay.
I can hear you.
You can hear me? Okay. Yeah, so let me come back down here and we can talk about our process. Well, we started out by when writing the mystery novel, Murder at the Estate Sale, and one of us would write a chapter, and then the other one would read it and edit it, and then write the next chapter, and email it back. And then that one would edit, and then write a next chapter, and then send it back and forth. And that worked pretty well until I wrote her point of view character, because we had two characters, and I was the point of view of one of them, and she was the other. And I wrote her point of view character locked into a basement with a dead body and no way out. So she told me that had to change. So we started meeting at coffee shops and plotting out the next few chapters. And then we actually had to plot the whole book. We didn't plot the whole book out first. Some writers plot their whole books out and know who the murderer. We didn't even know who the murderer was going to be. In fact, we thought it was going to be one, and we got up right to almost the last chapter and switched it to somebody else. So you want to say some more about the process?
Not really, but I guess just to clarify that we only plot like a couple chapters ahead. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so we'll do that, and we'll say, okay, you're going to go and do X, Y, Z, and then blah, blah, blah. And so it worked out really well. And one time we took a trip to Parker Ranch, which Marcia knows. And we actually stayed in the cabin where Marcia stayed. And Charlene would get up early. She's an early bird. I'm a night owl. She'd get up early, write a chapter. I'd read it. We'd go and walk the dogs. There's this huge field. We'd walk around. The dogs would be running around, and we'd walk along and talk about what was going to happen next. And I'd go back and, do my part in the afternoon. So that was really fun. It's really added a different dimension to our relationship. That's really
Yes,
fun.
it has. And it's been fun. People ask, well, don't you argue or fight? And the thing is, we do argue sometimes. We don't fight, but we do listen to each other. And I think that's pretty good. If I've got a point I really want to hold on to and say, we're not getting rid of that, then she will listen in the same, both ways. And so that works out pretty well. The second book, we did the same process, but I think we did plan a little bit better ahead and knew a little more about what was going to come up in the end. But still, we didn't have everything decided. So that's how that
We've changed the method of murder, of how the person was murdered like 3 times.
So now we have to read it over and make sure that the whole book is consistent. Right? And if somebody doesn't refer to the banging their head on a hook for a trailer instead of instead of how they did end up murdered. Right. So is that okay? Yeah. Yes, Mary.
I just thought I might add, because that title, Murder at the Estate Sale, was just such a brilliant invitation to want to read the book. But you know what? Just the other day, I was reading an article about, about Ukraine and this and that and the other. It was by a young man who apparently has written a lot of novels. And I just looked him up, and I found out that he wrote a novel with the title sort of in the same kind of vein, but it may even top the one you have. It's called Orgy at the STD Clinic.
I thought you were going to say it was the same title, and actually there's no rule against using somebody else's title.
And actually, if anybody reads the cartoon Crankshaft, there's a little old lady who has written a book, and it's called Murder at the Book Fair, which is the second book. And, Linda sent us copies of it by email.
Linda?
I just wanted to say I was reading something in the New York Times today, and a library was housing refugees and allowing the children to take some of the books. And I thought, yeah, it was just so wonderful, and it kind of goes along with your talk, and I just have to share that. So.
Thank you. Anyone else, or was that it? Okay.
Thank you, Charlene. Okay, I have a couple of community announcements. Don't miss the April Fool's Day open mic night. It's right here. Bring your poems, prose, songs, dance, and any other performances for all to enjoy. Friday, April 1st at 7:30 p.m. Be there or be somewhere. So that's great. It's actually an event in this sanctuary. Okay. March 18th and 19th at 8 p.m. at the First Baptist Church of Decatur is an Our Song concert, singing bluegrass, mass, and a couple of other songs. Go online for tickets, oursongatlanta.org. And this is from Carol Harder if you need any more information. Yes, Ted? March 18th and 19th, the next weekend. Okay, on Saturday at 8 p.m. will be Fiddler's Green right here. Now, Mary, I think you handed me this. The one about red wine jam, is that this weekend or is it today or next Sunday?
Next Sunday.
Okay, next Sunday. So next Sunday at 3 p.m., Red Wine Jam is performing children's songs at the Inman Park Horizon parking lot. And for those of you who have been to the Fiddler's Green concert here, Chris and Carol Moser are the people you'll see at the front door. They're the main organizers of the concert. And a friend of ours, Brenda Lloyd. So it's a trio, and they're really good. I haven't heard their children's songs yet. All right, I know Bill gave me one. Oh, okay, whatever. Okay, this is exciting. Next Sunday from 3 to 5 will be the Peace Pyramid, the World Opening Tour. So Bill and his comrades have erected a huge golf ball pyramid. How many golf balls are there, Bill?
22,140.
More or less. So that's from probably decades of collecting golf balls hit out of the course, right? Okay. And you can see it now, but that'll be the grand opening. And I'd like to announce that the Book and Bake Fair is coming back. It will be the last weekend in July, so start going through your shelves and putting aside books, CDs, DVDs, LPs, puzzles, and I don't know, we'll have to see how the bake part goes. You know, maybe it'll just be, you know, you can buy the baked goods, but you have to take them out, or, you know, we'll figure out what our policy is at that time. So we're going to have another song. This is going to be Song of the Soul.
What is it?
Okay, 106.
What is it?
106.
106.
Open mine eyes that I may see glimpses of truth thou hast for me. Open mine eyes, illumine me, Spirit divine. I am not dying, I am dancing along in the madness. There is no sadness, only a song of the soul, and we'll sing this song. Why don't you sing along, and we can sing for a long, long time. And we will sing this song. Why don't you sing along, and we can sing for a long, long time. What do you do for your living? Are you forgiving, giving shelter? All your heart love will find you, truth will unbind you. Sing out a song of the soul, and we'll sing this song. Why don't you sing along, and we can sing for a long, long time. And we'll sing this song. Why don't you sing along, and we can sing for a long, long time. Come to your life like a warrior, nothing will bore you. You can be happy. Let the light in it will heal you, and you can feel you. Sing out a song of the soul, we'll sing this song. Why don't you sing along, and we can sing for a long, long time. And we'll sing this song. Why don't you sing along, and we can sing for a long, long time. And we can sing for a long, long time.
Kathy McGuire, let's give her a hand. The closing words are a little bit gendered, but I can't think of a way to improve upon. Books to the ceiling, books to the sky. My piles of books are a mile high. How I love them, how I need them. I'll have a long beard by the time I read them.
Mm-mm.